Actually, first, hold on. First, I'm going to sprinkle, and I'm just going to show you guys because Instagram, you don't get as wide of a view as my Facebook followers. But this is my unflavored gelatin, unsweetened. It's just plain gelatin powder. You're going to need 4.5 teaspoons. And what you're going to do is just sprinkle it over the water that I have in the mixing bowl. So actually, I can do that right here for you. So just sprinkle it right over the water here. This is you guys should see the rig that we've got set up here. It's not super professional, but it's gonna do the job. So 4.5 teaspoons, just sprinkle it right over the water. So what we're going to do is let this gelatin bloom, and essentially what that means is it's just going to sit on some water and start to absorb some of the water, and the kind of gelatin molecules are going to start to expand. And it just helps everything kind of break down a little bit faster once you add in your hot honey syrup. And the gelatin, which seems a little strange, I'm sure, for a buttercream, is what I figured out gives a dairy-free frosting some structure. Because typically, if you are making a dairy-free frosting, you can't have it on a hot day. It's 10 o'clock here and it's already 102. So I'm gonna grab my cupcakes. Hold on just a quick sec. They need more time.
So we have a few people wondering if it can be made without gelatin, and or if you use a different brand of gelatin, will the amount vary at all?
Yeah, so no, it cannot be made without gelatin. There are lots of dairy-free frosting recipes out there, and I have a few that don't have gelatin in them. This particular one won't set up without it, and that's why I mean, this one was like 20 different tries to get it. I wanted a dairy-free buttercream frosting that could sit on cupcakes or cake during the summer. I mean, you don't want to have it out in 100-degree heat, but I wanted it to be able to at least withstand like 70, 80 and not just melt right off. So no, you can't, but if you do use a different brand, sometimes they're a bit more absorbent than others. And so I've got a few notes in here about what amount to use in the tidbits. Does it actually? No, that talks about the shortening, sorry. I think I've talked a bit before about Great Lakes gelatin being slightly more absorbent, so I would just go down maybe about a half a tablespoon. If you have made this and it's coming out kind of like marshmallow fluff as opposed to frosting, that could be one of the culprits. The other culprit could be overboiling your honey, or palm shortening kind of is a bit different just depending on what brand you get. And so I give tips for that too. And if you don't want to use palm shortening, I do have a variation of this recipe on my blog that uses regular grass-fed butter. So that's an option as well. Okay, so I've added in my honey. You can see this is my favorite type of honey because it's super light, creamy, raw honey. I get it from Tropical Traditions. I just love it because the flavor is so mild. And so it doesn't make your frosting just taste like you're eating honey, which I know a lot of people, you know, I mean, honey is wonderful, but you don't want everything to taste like it. And so if you don't have this particular kind, honestly, what I do is go to the grocery store and just look at the shelf, and whatever color is the lightest you can find, that's the one you want to get for my recipes, because typically a light flavor kind of equals light taste. And so it's just a little bit more mellow than some of those like wildflower type honeys. So I would suggest getting a candy thermometer for this. This one is great, but you can also just get one of those ones that attaches to your pan. I've got the half a cup of water in here along with the honey, and we're going to simmer it lightly. You don't want to bring it to like a crazy boil, but you do want it to get it to about 240 degrees Fahrenheit. And that it'll start to somewhat become amber, but not crazy. And why you're doing that is because you're basically making almost like a candy, and that's what makes this frosting setup as well. So you're doing the honey with the water. It's going to boil to a point that when it cools, it kind of solidifies slightly, and that's what gets the frosting its texture.
So we have a quick question about blooming gelatin. Kayla on Instagram is wondering if you are supposed to stir it into the water at all, or you kind of just sprinkle it and let it sit on top and that's it?
Nope, you just sprinkle it, let it sit on top. you don't need to stir it at all. I mean, you can, but then you're going to end up having some of it clumped to your spoon, and it's just not really necessary, especially because we're going to be putting in the hot liquid into this. And so whatever is not dissolved by the time we dump our liquid in, like you can see already, this is getting kind of that little bit of like a jelly kind of texture to it. And there's some that are kind of along my side here that hasn't fully gotten bloomed, but honestly it's going to be fine because we're going to pour this hot honey mixture kind of down the side of our mixer, and it's just going to end up incorporating it all. It's kind of like if you made, you know, like the box of just Jell-O back in the good old days, the you know, dyed sugar kind, and you always heated up either like hot water or hot juice and poured it in. It's the heat is really what is going to get it to dissolve in the end anyways. So I am just going to stir slightly just to kind of break this honey up so that it melts a little bit faster, but you don't really have to constantly stir. It doesn't need to be like a whisk or anything like that. Just as long as everything's incorporated, you should be good. Occasionally I just kind of swirl my pan, but honestly it doesn't really matter. And the one tip I have is don't get too, what is my word I'm looking for? I'm so tired and I just worked out and I'm out of it a little bit because we had a 2,000 meter benchmark row in Orange Theory and not quite recovered. Impatient, sorry. Don't get impatient and crank up your heat like crazy because you don't want to burn the honey. You just want it to get it to 240. So we've had it on for what, you know, a minute, 2 minutes. So it's not going to be close quite yet, but we are reading right now 155. So we're getting there. I'm gonna go check on my cupcakes super quick. If you guys wanna ask some questions, I can answer them for you.
So we do have a few people wondering, since you mentioned that you're using raw honey and it is being heated, is it possible to use non-raw honey just because raw honey is a bit more expensive is what quite a few people are looking at?
Yeah, so honestly, I would use raw honey because other honey has been heated already, and so you may not get the same texture. Also, raw honey just has, I think, a much more neutral flavor to it. But I mean, yeah, you're not going to get the health benefits, obviously, because you're not leaving it raw. But I would definitely still stick to raw and light colored. All right, we're getting close. 195. It's going to take another few minutes. We always are like surprised at how long it really does take it to get to 240 here. It just takes some time.
All right, so we also have some people wondering if there are any vegan alternatives for the beef gelatin.
You know, well, possibly agar-agar powder could work. I'm going to show you my cupcakes while I talk because they just came out. But I have not tried it. I tried it a long time ago in puddings and things like that, and it worked really well. So as long as it's powdered and it's similar, you might be able to sub that in 1 for 1. But again, I haven't tested it that way, so you just would want to try it yourself before. And definitely, if you're going to do it for like a birthday party, I would suggest giving it a shot at least like a week in advance. So if it doesn't work, you can try to find an alternative. I mean, there's probably a lot of vegan frostings out there that you can look into. The other option, potentially, I don't think it would set up quite as well, but I know you can whip aquafaba into like a meringue type of a consistency. So possibly try something like that, or search maybe for like a vegan aquafaba frosting, and you might find something. Oh, timer, hold on, even though I already pulled them out.
So Anne on Instagram is wondering, is this frosting recipe kid approved, and have you taken it to like a conventional, if you will, party?
It absolutely is kid approved. My kids love it, and yes, it was back, probably when Asher had his 5th or 6th birthday party, and I was almost gonna go to like Safeway and just go buy cupcakes for all the other kids because I wasn't sure if they would like it, and I ended up just making 1 cake and serving it to everybody, and all the kids liked it. So there we go. Okay, 240. I just am like, you know what? Once I get it approved by a whole bunch of kids who can eat whatever they want and have regular sugar frosting all the time, then that to me means that we're good to go. I'm just gonna double check one more time. My thermometer's wigging out here, but that's all right. All right, so here we go for this next part. So our gelatin is bloomed. We're gonna rotate you guys over here on Instagram. I can move that back to there too if that's better. And I'm going to start your engines. Start your mixer on low speed. Now, before I go, because I know a lot of people are going to ask if you need a stand mixer, I will say this process is a heck of a lot easier with one. If you have a hand beater, you would just need 2 people because you need to have it running on low, which actually I just am noticing my bowl is not locked in. You need to have it running on low while you pour the honey mixture in, and that's a little difficult to do on your own with a hand beater. I need to fix this one. There we go. Okay, so pop it down in there. Just put it on the stir level if you have the same hand mixer. And drizzle this mixture in. Just kind of let it run down the side. You don't want to go too quickly. So this is a very similar method to if you're making homemade marshmallows, and that's actually kind of where I got the idea from it. And also very similar to like a Swiss buttercream. And so I kind of combined those 2 things as I was testing recipes for celebrations and came up with this. And it's just been awesome for, like, we have a lot of summer birthdays. We've got June and August. And so it's been really nice to be able to have something that I know is going to withstand a little bit of the heat that we get here. But I do keep it, and I was going to give you guys some of those tips. I do keep it in the refrigerator until I'm ready to use it, and then I just rebeat it. And if you have to, sometimes you need to add like an extra tablespoon or so of palm shortening. This is my palm shortening. I get it from Tropical Traditions. It's right now, because it's so hot here, it's definitely more like the texture of a softened butter, which is pretty helpful in mixing it into this. But just depending on where you're at and how hot it is in your kitchen, you might need to pop the whole thing into the refrigerator for a little bit. You kind of just gonna have to play it by ear. It gets really hot in this kitchen during the summer, so it's you kind of just have to watch it. All right, so if you guys can stick around for a couple minutes, we're gonna just let this beat, and you're gonna watch it go from this liquid that's kind of brown, and it's just gonna start to puff up into this beautiful like white mixture. It's gonna double in size, but you just gotta keep it going for a little bit.
Wondering if you can use anything else in place of the arrowroot powder, possibly tapioca or anything like that?
Yes, so question is if you can use something in place of the arrowroot, which I'm gonna add at the end. Tapioca should work. If you can tolerate powdered sugar, that would be great as well. But yeah, you do need the starch, and I'm gonna explain that in a minute why I came to that. So give me a second till this is a little bit quieter, and then I'll talk to you guys about that as well. This has to go for like 8 more minutes, so if you want to walk away and come back, you're totally welcome to. Without the magic of like pre-recorded, I can't speed this up for you guys. Unfortunately, we're in real time, live, so if you want to see what happens, you can stay and just watch it. Maybe when I publish it on IGTV, I can speed it up a little bit for you guys, but just in case you missed this, by the way, any of my lives, I don't even know if you guys can hear me, any of my lives I put up on IGTV usually like 2 days later, and then on Facebook they live forever, but I also put them on YouTube, so if you want to go back and watch any of them, they're always there.
People are saying that they can hear you.
Great.
Over the mixer.
It's pretty loud.
So since they can hear you,
yes,
I'll ask the question for you. We have some people on Facebook wondering, Sky is wondering if, like right after the frosting is made, can you kind of let it fully cool and then just put it straight on the cupcakes, or should it be kept in the fridge and then piped on just right before you're about to eat the cupcakes?
You can put it on right away. Again, I think it's really just gonna depend on how hot it is in your kitchen. And if you need to refrigerate it for it to just kind of set up a little bit more, even if it's like an hour or something, and then you can do it. But yeah, no, you can totally pipe it on right away, just depending on what the texture of yours is. I have a feeling ours is gonna be slightly thin today because of how hot it is. I actually just went and put the palm shortening into the fridge just while this is working its magic, because I think it might need to be a little more solid. But yeah, no, you can definitely put it straight in, especially if you're making it in the winter and it's a little bit colder. So because this particular recipe uses coconut oil, I find, and there's no arrowroot or, gosh, even, is there coconut flour? I'm like, no, it's all almond flour. So they do sink a little bit more, but they're really, really good. And so with cupcakes, because they sink, because you're frosting them, I don't really think it matters. But I'm planning on digging out a little hole with a knife and filling it with some strawberry preserves before, and so then I'll actually make it kind of a little bit more of a dome after I do that. All right, still pretty liquidy. You can kind of feel your bowl, and if it's starting to get to room temperature, you're getting close. You don't want it to be hot to the touch, and mine is. And again, just in case you're joining late, I am making the dairy-free buttercream frosting from my Celebrations cookbook. There's quite a few variations on it. You can do like raspberry and chocolate. There's actually quite a few different frostings in general in the book. And then I'm making the strawberry cake for little Kezia's 2nd birthday tomorrow. I can't even believe it. It's pretty nuts. It's already been 2 years.
Okay, we have another quick question.
Yes.
We have some people that are saying they have a metal mixing bowl, not a glass one, and they're wondering if that at all would affect the outcome.
Nope, we've made it in a metal bowl too. I only use the glass ones just so you guys can see. But no, it's totally fine in a metal bowl. It'll work just as well. The only thing I would say about a metal bowl is sometimes it takes a little longer for the heat to come down. So you might need to mix just like ever so slightly longer, but you should be good. Okay, so I'm gonna stop this just to show you where we're at, even though we're not quite ready yet, but I just wanna kind of show you the stages. So it's not holding its shape at all yet, so you're not ready to go, but it's totally turned white. If you were watching from the beginning, it was very much like a yellow kind of amber color from the honey. And so you want to keep going until it's a lot fluffier and a lot cooler, because if you put your palm shortening into this when it's warm, it's just going to be a melty mess.
Wondering, do you prefer silicone, like cupcake muffin pans, or metal, and why?
You know, I don't have a huge preference, although I'm looking at how beautiful these ones turned out. They're like over the paper, but they have this beautiful, like, perfect kind of symmetrical dome to them, and that's because we did them in this really deep one. I probably would use this one again in the future. I used these for the other ones. I like silicone just because I try not to use a ton of metal in my baking, but metal's fine. They're gonna work. I think the only other thing with nut flour cupcakes is silicone, I think, bakes them a little bit more evenly. Nut flours can burn really easily, and so if you're using a particularly dark metal can, then you might get your bottoms burning a little bit. But otherwise, I really don't think it makes a huge difference. See this? See how close we're getting? Okay, I'm gonna stop again. I don't suggest stopping this much when you're actually making it, but I just really wanna show you guys the steps. So we're starting to like kind of hold our shape a little bit. It's looking a little bit more like that marshmallow fluff. I'm gonna keep going. Facebook's a little bit delayed and I'm like watching it on my computer, and I just gave my mixer a little love pat, like, you're doing a good job. Didn't even notice. There's really not anything else I can do while I'm just waiting for this, so just gonna sit here and hang out. Thanks for hanging with us.
So we have someone on Instagram wondering if you ever use date sugar or date syrup as a substitute for honey and maple syrup and coconut sugar in your recipe.
I use date syrup and dates a lot. It would not work in this recipe because dates and date syrup don't really crystallize and kind of be like, you can't really use them for candy making as much when they're heated. So it would not work for this. But yeah, I mean, date syrup and date sugar are great, especially for baking. Okay, we're getting very close, you guys. Very close. Probably like another minute. I'm gonna go pull my palm shortening from the fridge. All right, let's see where we're at. Super close. I think it's still, I'm gonna just feel, actually we might be able to add it. I'm gonna go for just another like 30 seconds just to make sure that everything is set up and that it's not too warm, and then I can add my palm shortening.
Dina on Facebook is wondering if your kids have any favorite cake and icing flavors, and if so, what are they?
Well, yeah, my boys love just the chocolate. It's nut-free and chocolate frosting. I think I'm partial to the nut-free yellow cake with the chocolate frosting, which is this guy right here. And they like this chocolate one right here. But strawberry for Kezia just because she really loves strawberry. There's a red velvet as well. Yeah, I think chocolate, I would say double chocolate for the kids. for sure. Okay, so we are good. If you overbeat, then you do have the potential of this kind of turning marshmallowy, and then it's going to be a little difficult to add your palm shortening. So I would stop when it's basically like making meringue, and that when you pull your beater out, you want it to kind of hold its shape and have stiff peaks. And so now I'm just going to add all of the palm shortening. And one thing I just like, just so it incorporates a little easier, I kind of just like to drop it like a tablespoon or so at a time, kind of just around the bowl. It just gives the mixer a little bit of an easier time. It's not essential, but just kind of a little trick. And then we'll add our arrowroot. And the reason why I'm doing arrowroot is because in most buttercream frostings, they call for powdered sugar, which is essentially just sugar and cornstarch or some sort of an other starch, and that's really what helps give your frosting its texture and kind of helps it set up. And so because we can't do powdered sugar, I'm doing arrowroot to kind of take its place. So we've got 6 tablespoons of arrowroot. Just a quick note on palm shortening, definitely make sure you find a sustainable, eco-friendly brand. I love Tropical Traditions, have supported them for like 12 years. So that's usually where I get mine from. But if you're looking in the grocery store, another one is Spectrum. I give some notes in this book about palm shortening. So make sure you read those, the tidbits that are on the second page of this recipe, because that will really help you to make sure that you get this right. Okay, and then a little bit of salt. And I love the flavor of vanilla, but I will say it does kind of make the frosting turn a little bit more of a brown color. So if you just really want that true white, I would just do a tiny bit, or you can even leave it out completely if you want. All right, so we're just gonna mix this back in, just kind of go low until it's all mixed in. And then we'll go back up on high for about 3 minutes. And usually the reason why we go back up on high is because it can start to look a little curdled, and you don't want to give up on it at that point. Just continue beating it.
So as you're doing that, we have somebody that is wondering what your thoughts are on the Nutiva brand of palm shortening and if that would work.
No, it will not. Definitely read the comments in the book regarding that. I don't use that one for anything that I bake. It's not true palm shortening, so it won't work for that type of thing.
I also have Julie on Facebook wondering if you could do it with ghee or butter.
I don't know about ghee. I worry because it just has, it has a lower melting point than butter. I would butter for sure. I've done it with butter. I look on my blog because I give some tips about that, and I use slightly less butter than I do palm shortening. So it just goes a little bit it goes a little further. So go on my blog, it's on there, and you can just make that recipe. It's almost identical. Okay, so I don't know if you could see from up there, but it did kind of look a little curdled at first, and then when I cranked it up, it kind of came back together. And if you run, your spatula kind of through it, it should be pretty smooth, and that's what we're seeing here. So I'm good with the way that this is now, and you could pipe it just because it definitely does. It holds its shape. It will hold its shape even more if you just refrigerate it for just a little while, because it'll help that gelatin set, and it'll also help that palm shortening, especially if you started out at pretty soft like I just did. It'll help that set up a little bit more as well. Now, I will say it gets pretty stiff in the fridge. So if you're wanting to use it, that day, you don't need that long in the fridge. You can maybe do an hour. And then if it does get too stiff, just let it sit at room temperature for a little bit, and it'll soften out like this again. And if you're beating it and it doesn't come back together as smoothly and as beautifully and fluffy like this, just add in like 1 tablespoon of palm shortening at a time with this mixer on low until you get to the consistency that you want. It'll bring it right back together. I've actually done that in the freezer as well. Here,